Nobody's got time for an intro here. This is a long video and I've got a lot of talking ahead of me, so here's the gist. Spoilers for season 1 of The Fosters. This is part 1 of a 2-part breakdown. In this part, I'm just going to be covering the plot and my favorite Stef scenes for some reason. But in the next video, I'll do the characters. And that's about all you need to know. So, The Fosters, season 1. Let's talk about it. I don't think that I can actually say that this show has a singular plot. Like, the story isn't structured in such a way that the characters need to get from point A to B or achieve some goal or something. I was tempted to say that the plot of season 1 is Callie and Jude's adoption because that's the only real continuous goal that plays out throughout the season and involves the most characters, affecting Callie and Jude, obviously, but also Brandon, Stef, and Lena. However, that wouldn't be an actual representation of the show, because that would imply that everything else that happens that's not directly related to Callie and Jude's adoption is filler, and that is not accurate. As a matter of fact, I don't believe this season even has a single filler scene, let alone an entire filler episode. So how can I describe the plot of season 1? Simply put, the plot is the premise, and the premise is family. We're just watching a family be a family. We're taken through the day-to-day lives of the parents and the kids with equal attention given to each character so that while Callie may be the main character, it doesn't really feel like it. And that's why I don't believe there's filler in this season. The only objective is to see what these characters are up to and watch how they handle the different challenges of life. Because of this structure, I'm going to have to dissect this section a little differently than in my other series breakdowns. I won't be able to judge the show's progress based on the plot. Instead, I'll have to discuss that in the character section, seeing where the character started and ended the season. For this section, I'm going to run through the different stories of each character. So, the story starts with Callie in juvie. We find out later that she's in here for destroying her foster father's car because he was beating Jude, her little brother. When she gets out, she goes to stay with the Fosters because she's presumed to have issues with male authority figures. We meet Lena, Mariana, Jesus, and Brandon, and it's only with Stef's entrance later on that we learn they're a lesbian couple. Nice as they are, Callie doesn't trust Stef or Lena yet, understandably, so she doesn't tell them that she has a brother in an abusive home, instead choosing to sneak off and go find him the next day. I have to say, even after my many rewatches, I still find it super weird that Callie calls Jude baby. Brandon goes with her. They execute a truly terrible plan to sneak into the house. It doesn't work. The guy has a gun and it all could have gone to hell, but Stef and Mike show up and save the day, which leads to Callie and Jude both being taken to stay with the Fosters. One thing I want to point out about this pilot episode is that it does a really good job of making it feel like we actually just stepped into the middle of the characters' day. Like, they all have their own stuff going on already. It's not that stuff starts happening to them just because the show has started, and I like that. But that also may contribute to why there's no real plot. After the pilot, Callie's story is actually pretty tame for a while. There's growing tension between her and Talia, Brandon's girlfriend, because she's jealous about how obviously infatuated Brandon is with Callie, which causes Talia to read Callie's journal, an assignment that she was given by her English teacher, which I don't even really understand because it's not graded. Then Talia tries to use the information she gets from the journal about Callie's former foster brother Liam to intimidate Callie into leaving Brandon alone. And I would just like to say that Talia was actually insane. Considering what we know about Liam and what he did to Callie, he raped her, but we don't know that for a while. Anyway, all of this drama finally comes to a head at Mariana's quinceañera when Talia threatens Callie, who was meant to dance with Brandon. Brandon confronts Talia and finally breaks up with her. While this is happening, Callie meets Wyatt and they start hanging out. He's basically her only friend and he obviously really likes her, but they don't start dating for a while yet. At least Callie keeps saying that they're not dating. Brandon doesn't like Wyatt, surprise surprise, because apparently he used to date Talia, which is like, coincidence? And he's all weird about him and Callie being together until finally confessing that he doesn't want Callie dating Wyatt because he doesn't want her dating anyone, which is the first time, I believe, that they actually admit having feelings for each other. Since this is such a huge part of the show, I'm going to talk about it as part of the plot and also as part of the character analysis. In terms of just plot, I don't love how this romance was depicted. I don't like the plot in general, but not because it's a bad plot line. I think it's a good way to add in drama and complicate things. And as I'll talk about in the character section, I think it was inevitable because of who Brandon and Callie are. I don't like it because it's just like, like it's so frustrating. However, when I say I don't like how it was depicted, I mean the execution. It goes from 0 to 100 so fast, and especially on Callie's side, there weren't moments where you could see that she's falling for him. Brandon definitely looks at her with these lovesick eyes, but I don't get that from Callie, which is fine. I'm okay with the idea that Brandon loves her while Callie just feels more like he's her best friend, except that's not how the show wants us to see it. We're supposed to believe they love each other with equal intensity, and I never buy it. So, going back to this scene with Brandon saying that he doesn't want her dating anyone, this moment hasn't been earned. We didn't spend enough time with Brandon pining after Callie, or trying to tell her how he feels, or telling someone else how he feels, or even just scenes where him and Callie hang out and enjoy each other's company. So it's a reveal to us, but it's also a reveal to Callie, I feel like, who up until this point, I don't really think was aware of how he felt for her, and definitely does not feel the same. Anyway, after Callie tells him they can't be together because she and Jude could get kicked out of the house, and she could be sent to a group home, Callie meets a girl in her group therapy that is currently being fostered by, Liam's family. So she tries talking to this girl, Sarah, trying to figure out if Liam is doing the same thing to her, decides that he probably is, and when talking to her doesn't go so well, Callie decides to speak up about what happened to her in group and get Sarah taken out of the house. This leads to a really important character moment for Callie, which again I'll talk about in the character section, obviously. But basically, once Sarah is out of the house, Callie feels like the work is done. Like, she doesn't need to fight Liam anymore, despite the fact that he's shown up multiple times now to threaten her to stay away from Sarah. But Brandon tells her that what she did for Sarah was great, but Callie deserves justice for herself as well. So Callie tells Stef and Lena about Liam and what he did to her, but we don't get to see it, which I kind of would have liked to see Stef's reaction to Callie telling them about Liam, honestly. But yeah, Callie decides to get some justice for herself. Oh, I should also mention that when Liam shows up at school to threaten Callie, Wyatt gets into a fight with him, and he and Callie break up, or kind of break up, because they weren't officially dating yet, I think. Wyatt doesn't know who Liam is or what he did to Callie, but Brandon does. And I don't know how I feel about Wyatt. I used to think that he would be pretty good for Callie if it wasn't for Brandon's interference and all of that drama. But on this rewatch, I'm not so sure. He obviously really loves her, but telling her to tell him something deep and personal and obviously traumatic just to prove that there's nothing going on with her and Brandon, I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me. He also tells her that she might be a little bit too messed up even for him, and that doesn't get properly resolved. After this, Brandon comes on really strong with Callie, and in a bid to put some distance between them, which honestly to me doesn't read like a girl avoiding a boy because their feelings for each other are dangerous, and more like a girl avoiding a guy who's creeping her out a little bit, or just coming on a bit strong. Anyway, Callie asks Wyatt out and they kiss. But that same night, Stef is shot, so they all go to the hospital. While they're there, Wyatt calls Callie out for using him to stay away from Brandon and encourages her to tell him how she feels, which works somehow. Nothing has changed. Callie still knows how bad this would be for her and Jude, but for some reason, Wyatt's argument that putting her heart out scares her more than getting caught breaking the rules does, and that this whole situation with Stef being shot is proof that you should seize the day, just works on her. So yeah, Callie runs to tell Brandon how she feels, but he's with Talia, so she changes her mind. Skip to Stef and Lena's wedding. Callie and Brandon kiss. It's as abrupt and foolish as that, with no real build-up, especially since Stef and Lena just said they want to adopt Callie and Jude. It really doesn't feel like Callie would kiss Brandon after hearing this. It should have been before. And then, after hearing that they want to adopt them, she runs away to make sure it doesn't ruin Jude's chances. Anyway, they kiss. After. Jude sees them, he yells at Callie for being selfish and ruining everything, and that night Callie packs up and runs away. Wyatt is conveniently leaving town the next day, so she hops in with him and off they go. Poor Wyatt just has no idea what to do. He doesn't know what is going on, but he loves Callie, and obviously, he wants to be with her, but he knows that this is a terrible decision that she's made. In the end, he does the right thing and he calls Stef and Lena, but then after a lovely night cuddling with Callie, he says, "Screw the right thing, I want her," and tries to escape before they're caught. Unfortunately, Stef and Lena are already there. Callie sees them talking to him and she escapes in a truck. Honestly, Callie's plan is just the proper amount of stupid for a 16-year-old. She doesn't know where she's going and her plan is just to get somewhere, get a job, and then get a place to live. She actually thinks it would be that simple. But even if she was able to get a job the day she arrived, where would she sleep every night until she gets her paycheck? She doesn't stop to think at any point after she kisses Brandon. She's just literally running like a scared animal. No one can say that this show isn't realistic, honestly. At least this season, because Callie lasts less than a day on the run. For all her talk about not needing anyone, she has no idea how to survive on her own. She's immediately presented with the option of going into prostitution, which, can you imagine if that was the road this show went down? But anyway, they don't. And so, rather than work the corner, Callie gets herself sent back to Julie, where she refuses to see any of the Fosters because, remember, her goal is to make sure that she doesn't mess up Jude's adoption, so she's trying to remove herself from the equation entirely. Brandon throws a fit when he realizes that his mothers aren't planning to go to Callie's sentencing hearing because, she doesn't want them there, which leads him to finally having to tell them about his relationship/feelings for Callie. So they go to the sentencing, but they tell the judge that they can't bring Callie home, which had my jaw dropping the first time I watched this. I'm not gonna lie. I felt so betrayed for Callie before they tell us that it's not forever. They're not saying they don't want her. It's just that they literally cannot have her in the house yet because they don't know what to do about Brandon. This leads Callie to be sent to a group home, Girls United. And honestly, it's the best place for her. I really liked this story point. I love Rita as a character, and I love the opportunity for Callie to be confronted with her own privilege. No, to be clear, her life has not been easy by any means. She's been through it for sure. But at this point, she had a lot more than the other girls in Girls United. She had people who actually cared about her, people who were fighting for her, people that she could rely on, and she was behaving like a brat, to be honest. She's the one who messed this up. She's the one who was fooling around with Brandon. This time, it wasn't the world being against her or her bad luck or someone in her life letting her down, and she needed to take that accountability. That said, I actually think that keeping Callie isolated like this made the situation worse, temporarily. I understand why they thought that keeping her from Brandon was the best decision, and Girls United is actually a really good place for her to be, because they are right, she does need to learn coping mechanisms. Despite the fact that she doesn't want to see the Fosters, hearing them say they don't want her just made her spin out all the more, I think. So now she thinks Brandon is the only person that she can trust. He's the only person that cares about her. And Brandon, on the flip side, feels like it's his fault that Callie is all alone. So he becomes desperate to overcompensate for the love and affection that she's missing. Basically, it intensified the feelings they had for each other, which is why now, all of a sudden, they're in love. When before the wedding, I don't think even they would have described it that way. I think they would have just said that they like each other. But I want to talk about the Girls United girls for a second. Prostitution for Cole? I forgot about this. It's crazy, considering how he identifies. It's crazy just for any of them, but Cole specifically. I never thought about it before, but imagine how absolutely horrifying this was for him to go through. He hates everything about his body as it is now, but he has to use it, sell it, to get what he needs. It's just, oof. And the rest of the girls in the group have similarly insane stories. Their lives were actually crazy considering they're 15. I mean, crazy for anybody. Like, they've been in gangs, they're addicted to hard drugs. Daphne has a 2-year-old, meaning she gave birth when she was 15. I don't know, man. Their stories are... I don't think they're given the appropriate weight, and that's with the show still portraying them as pretty dark. Like, Becca was getting high with her grandmother. Her mother's boyfriends have been messing with her for years, and I just, like, when she's asked what she wants to be when she grows up, this pure baby says happy. Supposed to be happy. Like, big oof. Anyway, back to the plot. As mentioned, Callie and Brandon become even more intense, sneaking around to see each other, which gets Callie in trouble at GU and results in a restraining order for Brandon to stay away from Callie, which they both just completely ignore with no consequences. It isn't until Callie's roommate, Cole, overdoses on hormone drugs she was getting by using Callie's secret phone, which she was using to talk to Brandon, that Callie gets a rude awakening and decides to properly commit to Girls United. I actually really love this scene for Cole, after Cole overdoses and the other girls call Callie out. Imagine having the life that they've lived, and then here's Callie playing the victim, acting like no one understands her pain, when in your eyes, her life has been pretty easy. Despite being on this new path of taking accountability, Callie still maintains that she wants to be alone. She decides she doesn't want to get adopted, but would rather do this independent living program that Daphne's doing, where you're given an apartment and an allowance, and you have to get a job, you still have to go to therapy and get your GED. Basically, what Callie thought she was gonna do in Indiana on her own is what she's now choosing to do here. And you get support, you get a stipend or something. And as an added bonus, she can be with Brandon. I wish they'd shown us scenes with Callie and Brandon. I'm gonna say this a lot, but just enjoying each other's company. Like, we see Callie and Wyatt together often, having actual conversations. He made her laugh and stuff. But with Brandon, now they're supposed to be actually dating, but it's still so awkward with them. Like, they don't know what to say to each other or how to act around each other. And I don't know, maybe the actors didn't have chemistry, but it just, yeah. However, Stef's dad dies and Callie attends the funeral to be there for Jude. They put in scenes from Callie and Jude's mother's funeral throughout the episode, just to, break your heart further. And this episode 15, Padre, might be my favorite episode. I've watched it the most times, definitely, but it's always been difficult for me to explain why I love it so much. It might actually be the episode with the worst acting of the entire season, and yet I love it so much. I think it's because it's a very introspective episode. It's not so much about the drama that's going on in the characters' lives, but about their internal struggles. It's about them dealing with their emotions and confronting their past. Callie breaks down when she loses her necklace, which we learn is her mother's necklace, and Stef is the one to comfort her in one of my favorite Stef moments ever. And then Callie realizes that she's being silly and she should come back to live with the Fosters. So she and Brandon break up. And after that, not much happens with Callie. She gets back into Jude's good graces by making a big deal about his birthday, goes to a party with Mariana where she doesn't drink, fights with Brandon about how them not being together hasn't been easy for her either, which, show me where. We've seen Brandon being bent out of shape about it, but Callie's been pretty fine. Not to beat a dead horse, but seriously, they didn't do a good job of establishing Callie's love for Brandon. The big thing with her is that her parole officer and school principal really want her to get more involved in the school community. And they really try to paint this principal as a bad person, or as a bad principal at least, but honestly, I don't see why. She lets Lena add 2 kids to the school, yet we find out later that there's a waiting list, and all she says is that Jude has to pass the proficiency test, which is completely fair. She lets Callie come back despite being a literal juvenile delinquent with a record and everything. And then towards the end of the season, she says she wants Callie to be more engaged in school. not just, show up for classes and stuff, which isn't even coming strictly from her. It's also coming from Callie's parole officer. And again, it's fair. Then the big thing with her not wanting to expel Vico later, she doesn't want to lose the school's biggest donors, which, considering how everyone starts complaining about all the programs that end up being cut and how the school has no money after Vico leaves the school in season 2, this was a completely valid fear. Anyway, yeah, so now Callie is she's faced with the issue of looking like she's making friends, even though everyone either hates her because she stole Brandon from Talia, or they think she stole Brandon from Talia, or they just shun her because she's a juvenile delinquent. She awkwardly tries to make friends for a while, and then when her name gets put up for a prom queen nomination, she leaves it in, convinced by Wyatt, Wyatt's back. And I have no idea where he's staying for the rest of the time he's around, because Callie takes him to Daphne's and says it's only for a little while. So I don't know, is he just living with Daphne indefinitely for the rest of the show? I don't know, no idea. Anyway, Wyatt, Stef Lena, and Mariana all convince Callie to leave her name on the ballot because it'll look good to the principal and the parole officer. It, of course, is a setup. Vico is Brandon's new arch nemesis. He made a fake ID for Callie and bought a bunch of alcohol to give kids at prom in order to make it seem like Callie bribed them with alcohol so they'd vote for her as prom queen. I just want to say that I've never understood this prank of putting someone else's name in the prom queen nominations. It happens a lot in Glee, and I have no idea if this is actually something American kids do, but it makes no sense to me. Like, why would the popular kids even allow this? I mean, like, don't they actually want to be prom queen? Oh, I completely forgot to mention the stuff going on with Callie's dad. So in order to get adopted, they need their dad to sign away his parental rights, which means finding him and getting in contact with him. When Callie ran away and was propositioned to become a prostitute, remember, she called her dad she called the jail to try and talk to her dad out of desperation, only to find out that he was out of jail already and had been for a while. So she has some feelings about that, obviously, understandable. She refuses to see him even when Jude says he wants to, and then sneaks off to go see him anyway. I really have to say that the duality of Callie being frustrated that her dad hadn't done better to get her and Jude back, and simultaneously being so defensive of Daphne, who she believes is doing everything she can to get her daughter back, is why I love this show. Quick spoilers for the next season. You can skip ahead a few seconds if you don't want to hear it. They also do this with Daphne and Callie's real dad, with her saying that she should stay with the Fosters because she knows and loves them and it should be her choice. But at the same time, she testifies that Daphne should get her daughter over the perfectly great foster family who clearly love her because Daphne is her biological mom and it's her right. And honestly, this show is so impressive with how it handles a lot of its subject matter. It often presents multiple sides to the same story, and I love it so much for that. Callie says, "You're nothing like my dad," to Daphne. And yet, Daphne was in a gang. Her dad drove under the influence once. Like, Daphne is actually worse. I also really love how, real Daphne is. She always calls Callie out, and don't we all need a friend like that? Callie is upset, and she has big feelings, and we all understand this, but it's difficult for her to accept that she has these feelings, so she uses Jude as an excuse. But Jude's not the one who's confused. Granted, he doesn't have all the information, but still. Callie projects onto Jude a lot, similar to how she believed that he's the one who destroyed her room after their mom died, only to find out she'd falsified her own memory. As she's struggling with these big feelings, she tells Brandon about her dad, confiding in him because, as I said, it feels more like to Callie, Brandon's just her best friend. But he throws a complete tantrum, being extremely insensitive and rude, honestly. But then, guess what? He never apologizes. Next episode, Callie just talks to him like everything is okay. And in fact, he wants to profess his undying love to her without even acknowledging how terribly he treated her. He literally yells at her that her dad doesn't care about her, he abandoned her, and he's like, "Callie, you can't keep changing your mind about what you want." Honestly, acting like a spoiled child. In her secret meetings with her dad, Callie gets to ask him all the questions about why he stopped writing to her when he was in prison, why he didn't try find them when he was out, and it's so good because, as I've said, we've already seen with Daphne how hard life is when you're out of jail and trying to get your kids back, which I have to say, I'm so glad that they do actually show Daphne struggling, because the show made it seem like this independent living thing was so great when Callie was dead set on living alone. Like, it was a perfect solution and a chance at freedom and so on for her. But now that she's got her head on straight, they're showing the reality of it and why all the adults, Stef and Lena and Stef's mom were all just like, why so confused by Callie's insistence that she wants to do this, when they know, like, this is going to be so hard. They kept telling her, like, life is hard enough as it is. Why are you rushing into it, Like, how hard it is to find a job, how little food you actually have to eat when you have no money, how hopeless you feel. Yeah, so now we get to see that through Daphne. And honestly, I feel really terrible for her. Anyway, yeah, Callie hashes out with her dad and tells him that he has to sign away his rights. And I don't agree with this. I think it's fine for Callie to say what she wants, but I don't think it's right for her to decide for Jude. Like, okay, she wants to be adopted, but she should have let Jude decide for himself what he wants their dad to do. She, at the very least, could have talked to Jude about it, more than just the, hypothetical, how would you feel if he said that he wanted to get us back type of thing that she tries to do. Can you imagine if Jude found out that she did this? He doesn't, though. And they have a very emotional scene with their dad coming over to hand over the papers and basically tell them that he might not be their parent anymore, but he's always going to be there for them. And I really have to commend Jude's actor, Hayden. He's so young, but he does such a good job, especially with all of these emotional scenes that oftentimes the older actors struggle with. They're really hard to do. I really don't blame them, but he does really well. So back to prom night. Brandon confesses his love for Callie yet again. Callie tells him yet again that they can't be together, and honestly, this is why Brandon pisses me off so much. He said when they broke up that he understood that Callie needs a family more than a boyfriend, and that for them to be together, she has to give up so much. So why is he back to pursuing her? She's getting adopted in days! And he knows his parents will not be okay with this. But he's just making stupid plans, acting like he can control anything. Moving forward, knowing the consequences and not caring. Just throwing tantrums because Callie's trying to act like his sister. Look, I don't hate him, but he's honestly the most irritating of the kids. In order for him to get over Callie, Brandon begs her to break his heart. And Callie tells him really quickly, coming up with this lie really quickly, she says she slept with Wyatt when they were on the road. Brandon is broken as requested, but then things heat up because Callie's been set up, and the cops are here and things are looking bad. Considering that Callie has already been set up before for selling drugs, it really shouldn't be that unbelievable that it's happening again. Yet, the principal is acting like it's such a far-fetched idea for some reason. But anyway, Brandon to the rescue. He takes the fall for it and says that he's the one who set Callie up to get back at her for breaking his heart. And the cops, just look at stuff like, what do you want us to do here? And she's just like, arrest him. Which crazy, but like, good on her, for real. Then Callie does something that really pisses me off. After everything cools down, they're all back home. She overhears Stef Lena wondering what's happened to Brandon, their poor little good boy. And so she goes up to Mike's house where Brandon is staying and tells him that she'll ruin this adoption if he says she's hurting him. And it's just like, how do you go to someone who you know loves you very deeply, who just got arrested for you, and tell them, look, I want this more than I have ever wanted anything in my entire life, but if it's hurting you, I'll ruin it right now. I will mess this whole thing up. So, am I hurting you? Like, she knows full well that he's not gonna say yes, and she knows that she's hurting him. That's why she's there. He literally told her last night that he wants to be with her, begged her to basically break his heart because he cannot get over her. So she knows he's hurting. she's just doing this to soothe her own conscience so that she can tell herself, I asked him, he said it was okay, that's not my fault. Not that I'm saying that she shouldn't get adopted just because Brandon still loves her, but it's just like this whole trip is a very superficial attempt to show that she cares about him. It feels more like it's for herself. And with that, it's adoption day at last. Hooray! Except, of course, things can never be that easy. Callie has a different dad. Dun dun dun. Poor Callie. And until he signs away his rights, she cannot be adopted. The scene where she tells Jude to get adopted without her is so painful. Jude's acting, chef's kiss. Stef and Lena's hearts just breaking in the background. Callie trying to smile and act like she's okay. Man, who is cutting onions? Please. Then it's followed up with another amazing scene with Rita telling Callie that she doesn't know if everything is going to be okay, but it might, and Callie has to actually stick it out to see. I really love that because Stef and Lena immediately go to if something bad happens, they say everything is going to be okay. They always say, like, I promise we're going to figure it out, it's going to be okay. Even though it's obvious, even to the kids, that everything is very much not fine. So I like Rita just being honest here and treating Callie like an adult and saying, this sucks and I have no idea what's going to happen, but you have to let it play out and just handle things as they come. That, I think, is it's better life advice than the everything will work out mentality, because sometimes things don't work out, especially for Callie, and you just have to be able to be okay when they don't. And that is it for Callie this season. It ends on a really sad note for her, which is just, how things go in this show. She never really has any peace, but I do like the way her story has progressed. She starts off not really caring about what happens to herself. She mostly just caring about Jude, and she's always on the defensive and she's always running away. And she ends the season in a much more stable place where she's actually allowing herself to want something, to want to be happy, to want to be a part of this family. It's called growth, Alright, now let's go back to the beginning and talk about Mariana. The show starts with her smack in the middle of an intense situation, which I really love because, like I said, it immediately makes the characters feel like real people who had lives before the show started. So Mariana has gotten in contact with her birth mother in secret, despite Stef and Lena already working on setting up a meeting for them, basically because she wants to have the reunion without them so she can have a more natural reconnection, which honestly I understand. I don't know how long she was planning to keep this whole relationship a secret, like if it did go well, but that's not the point here. She's been messaging her birth mother, Anna, who asks her to bring some money to their first meeting. In order to get that money, Mariana has been selling Jesus' ADHD pills. I do wonder how much Anna asks for though, or at least how much Mariana gives her, because it looks like a lot of money. How much do you think she was selling the pills for? Because Jesus says he just got a new bottle and it's almost finished. So she hasn't been selling them for months, more like probably just 1 month. So her prices must have been pretty high. Anyway, despite Jesus finding out what she's been doing and yelling at her about how stupid it is to get involved with Anna, Mariana takes all the money that she's made and gives it to Anna, who promptly takes it and leaves, effectively telling Mariana the only reason she asked for this meeting was for the money, not because she wanted to see Mariana, which is actually really terrible. Unfortunately for Mariana, her friend Kelsey, who she sold some of Jesus' pills to, gets caught snorting those pills in the bathroom. I have no idea why she chose to take them that way. Insanity. Kelsey accuses Callie, and Mariana honestly seems like she just might let Callie take the fall for it, if not for Jesus, who knows that it's her and forces her to do the right thing. However, at the last moment, Jesus, the amazing brother that he is, says that it was him who sold the pills so that Mariana doesn't get in trouble because she's so worried about their parents hating her. Her gratitude doesn't last long though, because she throws a complete fit when she finds out that her best friend, Lexi, and Jesus are dating. Now, I do understand her argument when she says that Lexi didn't defend her to Jesus when he was calling Mariana selfish and all of this stuff. because it would be pretty upsetting to hear your brother and your best friend talk about you like that. On your birthday, no less. So fair enough. Though, it is also Jesus' birthday, but... So, as she's fighting with her best friend and feeling insecure, Mariana meets one of her old friends, her parents' friend's son, and spends the entire episode trying to impress him. He's into slam poetry, and our dear Mariana actually signs up and performs, despite not knowing anything about slam poetry. Honestly, I have to give it to Mariana. There's a reason they call her Miss Thane. She's got her faults, her biggest one being her deep-rooted insecurities, but she's a hell of a character. It's like in her head, there's nothing that she can't do, and I really love that about her. The family all go to one of the slam poetry readings to support Mariana's friend, and my gosh, I have to say, I'm not a poetry person, but god damn it, this one and the entire performance was just amazing. So emotional, so powerful. Truly a great scene for such an irrelevant character. In an attempt to impress this boy, Mariana gets a nose ring, and when Brandon sees her, he says, "Moms are gonna kill you." And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because when he says it, it just struck me how this "moms are gonna kill you" sentence is such a hollow statement in this show. Mariana comes down, and they do nothing about it. They sigh and they express their shock and their disappointment. They'll say that they'll deal with it later, and then nothing. It's never brought up again, except in like one or two scenes when Mariana's complaining about it, and Stef says something like, "You should have asked that before you stuck a needle in your face." I don't know. I'll really rant about this when we get to Brandon and when I talk about Stef and Lena specifically. But as much as I love them, I cannot get on board with their parenting style. Mariana meets Anna again, though this time she's firm about not having any money. She's at least, kind of learned her lesson. You can never say that Mariana makes the same mistake twice. And so has Anna, it seems, because she actually acts really sweet during this meeting. She gives Mariana a teddy bear as a gift for her birthday, and this is how their first meeting should have gone. That night, Mariana and Callie go to Wyatt's party. Despite Callie trying to keep Mariana in check, Mariana meets Kelsey, who tells her about Jesus and Lexi wanting the morning after pill, so Mariana gets her feelings hurt all over again. I'm not really sure why. She's upset that Lexi didn't tell her, but she's the one who's been refusing to talk to Lexi and Jesus. So I'm not really sure why this sends her into a spiral, but it does. Which means that she drinks a lot. By the time Callie gets her back home, she's completely wasted and therefore cannot control her mouth when she finds out that Jesus is going to the Christian camp with Lexi, so she spills the beans about them having sex. Disaster. Honestly, I don't know how Lexi forgives her for this. Actually, I want to say that I really love this scene when Mariana and Callie interrupt the dinner, and Callie's trying to keep Mariana up, trying to help her walk, but she stumbles. And Stef immediately realizes that she's drunk. And Lexi just keeps nodding her head like, yeah, that's a good idea, let's go. Like, both of them just knew. Anyway, the next day, Mariana meets Anna again, where she asks for money again, and then proceeds to tell her to steal something from her house because they're family. Family takes care of family. Honestly, I have to say that I'm really proud of Mariana for holding her ground against Anna. I don't think any of the other kids could have. I don't even know if Stef could. Not Stef, Lena. I don't think Lena could. Because this is her birth mom, and she desperately wants to get to know her birth mom, and whose love and approval she craves. So I really wouldn't have blamed her for falling for Anna's manipulation over and over again. People older than her do it all the time in the real world, especially with that "we're family" line. Selfish and dramatic though she may be, Mariana comes through in the end, helping Lexi when she runs away, bringing Jesus to her, and then bringing her back home to see her parents. Lexi threatening to call immigration on her parents if they send her to boarding school is actually such an insane way to resolve this plot. It doesn't last, but it's just like, what? Anna, being the delightful woman that she is, to quote Stef, continues to harass Mariana for money, calling her and sending her messages. I mean, she even calls the house phone as if someone else, like, I don't know, the cop that lives in the house couldn't answer. To get her to finally stop, Mariana decides to go over to where Ana is staying and tell her to her face to leave her alone. Jesus, again the good brother that he is, goes with her. And I honestly love how they play this scene. It's one thing to be thrust into the middle of the drama with Mariana and Ana because we didn't really see the build up. And we see them meeting for the first time and we're immediately shown how sketchy she is. But the writers, they're clever, they give us that perspective first, so we're with Jesus the entire time when he's yelling at Mariana. Then they flip it back in our faces with his first meeting with Ana, and him being forced to confront how he actually feels about his birth mother. She went from being a practical stranger that he never really thought about and could hate easily to a human being standing in front of him. Like, two things can be true at the same time. She's a terrible mother, a junkie, and so on, but she also needs help, and denying her isn't as easy as he thought. Mariana recognizes that Ana has gotten to Jesus, so when he goes MIA later, she starts freaking out, assuming correctly that he's with Ana. Considering Ana lives in a pretty terrible neighborhood with a sketchy guy, Mariana panics appropriately and tells Stef Lena all about Ana and where she thinks Jesus is, and this leads to Stef getting shot. The next episode is a hard one for Mariana, who genuinely has abandonment issues and is not taking Lena's inability to even look at her very well. But Stef ends up being okay. Lena finds Mariana and talks to her about what she thinks Mariana wanted from her birth mother in the first place and how DNA doesn't make a family, love does. It's so interesting that even after 8 years of being with Stef and Lena, Mariana is still afraid that they could stop loving her. It shows that, people don't just get over being abandoned as kids. It leaves deep emotional scars, which of course I shall be talking about in the character section. Mariana's drama calms down for a while after that. She gives Callie a nice speech about how lying is never the best idea when Callie's trying to decide whether or not to lie in her court case with Liam. And she tells her, whatever you decide, we've got you, right? Which I think is so meaningful because it's what Mariana knows she'd need to hear if she was in Callie's situation. Things don't pick up for her again until after Callie's back in juvie. She joins the school play in the props department because the lead in the play is attractive. And we know how poor Mariana gets when an attractive boy shows any interest in her. Though not Matt. Spoilers? I don't know. And I maintain that this is why Matt was perfect for her. Kelsey is a part of the school play and also into the lead of the play, Chase. She steals a hat for him while she and Mariana are out shopping, but puts it in Mariana's bag. So technically, Mariana stole it. Mariana wants to return it until Chase sees it and loves it, and then she quickly forgets that it was stolen. While she's working on the costumes, she becomes friends with a boy called Zach, who obviously likes her, but she can't tell because she's so obsessed with Chase. Her interest in Chase leads Kelsey to get jealous, and after Kelsey sees them kiss, it's part of rehearsals for the play, but who cares? She goes to the principal and tells the principal that Mariana stole the hat and actually is the one who sold her the drugs. Personally, I wouldn't believe Kelsey so easily if I was a part of the school's administration. She already lied about it being Callie the first time, and Jesus has already confessed and did the time. What evidence could Kelsey provide this time to prove that she's not lying again? Especially if Jesus and Mariana just stick to their story. Anyway, Mariana gets suspended, and then once she's back from suspension, she goes to the cast party, with Callie and Zach, who I think wanted this to be a date. It's implied, but he also denies it very convincingly later, so I am actually not sure. Thanks to some encouragement from Talia, which is some truly insane advice, Mariana puts her underwear in Chase's back pocket, which he takes to mean she wants to sleep with him. She obviously doesn't because she doesn't know this guy at all. He gets annoyed, reveals himself to be the jerk, and then leaves. Zach, who has been trying to hang out with Mariana all night, catches them in the bedroom and finally decides that he's had enough, and so he leaves as well. Unfortunately for Mariana, Chase can't let this go. So he and his friends start tormenting her with underwear at school, wearing it in their back pockets and putting it in her locker and stuff, which is just like, what kind of bullying is this? Jeez. But Callie helps Mariana ignore these idiots, and Zach gets revenge from her by writing a scathing review of Chase's performance in the school play in the school paper. This helps them smooth things over and become friends again. But thanks to a surprise visit from Lexi, Mariana realizes that she and Zach could be more than friends. She tries to flirt badly, but she's cute and we love her. And then she and Zach kiss and he asks her on a date. Hooray! Mariana finally has a boyfriend. And as they are dating, she meets Zach's mom, who at first is just weird. But then we begin to realize that there actually might be something wrong with her. She flip-flops between liking Mariana and calling her names. She's always forgetting things that she shouldn't, like how long it's been since Zach's dad left. And I also want to say that the actress who plays Zach's mom is she's very, very good at playing emotionally distressed or unhinged women. It all comes to a head at prom. Everything comes to a head at prom. Zach's mom is a chaperone. Thinking that Zach is his dad again, she gets upset that he's dancing with Mariana, saying that she won't be made a fool of in front of all their friends, and then she storms off. When they finally find her sitting on a bench, she doesn't even recognize Zach at all. The next day, Zach finally tells Mariana that she has Alzheimer's, and it's honestly just so sad that he has to deal with this all alone. He tells Mariana that this isn't even the first time she hasn't recognized him, but after he calls Mariana and shows her that she hit him, and my goodness, she hits him hard because, like, look at these marks. These are serious. Mariana finally convinces him to call his dad and ask for help, which means that he's gonna have to move to Arizona. Mariana is so good about it. She tells him that she just wants him to be safe, but then she admits to Brandon later on that she feels like everyone she loves ends up leaving. And I mean, apart from Zach, it's just Lexi who's left. But again, she has abandonment issues, so we understand. And that's it for Mariana this season. Let's do Jesus because I think that'll be fast. Compared to the others, I wouldn't even say that Jesus has any drama. He likes Lexi, which annoys Mariana, but he and Lexi just go on to date regardless of how Mariana feels. They sleep together without protection, and Lexi panics because, she could get pregnant. So Jesus tries to get her the morning after pill, only to be caught in the act by Stef. Lena says that because she's Lexi's vice principal, she's obligated to tell her parents, which I'm not really sure that I understand. Because, if she just found out after Jesus had already given it to her, would she be obligated to tell Lexi's parents then? I mean, she didn't buy it for Lexi, and Lexi didn't come and confide in her. She just happened to find out some information about Lexi outside of school, and that has nothing to do with her education. So, I don't know, maybe we just have a different kind of system in Kenya versus in the United States, because teachers definitely do not feel these kind of moral obligations towards their students where I'm from. Not saying that it's wrong or right, just that, I don't understand it. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments if teachers are like this where you're from. Anyway, in the end, Stef gives Lexi the pill without telling Lena, because, time is ticking and Lena is taking way too long to decide what she wants to do about it. And I love it when Lena gets sassy. It's actually like my favorite version of her. When Stef tells her that she gave Lexi the pill so that Lena wouldn't have to, Lena is like, how generous. It's such a deadpan expression. And there's also, after the fight with Stef, or about taking Mike's side on their decision to punish Brandon after he skipped his audition, Stef asks Lena what they should do about Callie because she's just been accused of selling drugs, right? And Lena says, I don't know, maybe we should ask Mike. I don't know, I like the spicy Lena, guys. Back to Jesus. Lexi takes the pill, crisis averted, hallelujah. But not for long though, because in an attempt to impress Lexi's parents, which I'm not really sure why, because they already love him and the Fosters, Jesus gets his parents to host a dinner. And at this dinner, they discuss the Christian camp that Jesus wants to go to. Stef's dad is there, and we find out that he doesn't exactly approve of Stef and Lena since he's very religious, and he debates with Lexi's parents, who are also very religious, about how they can accept the Fosters and claim to be Catholic. And Lexi's parents say that they don't have to subscribe to every teaching to be good Catholics. And Stef's dad says they can't just pick and choose, and they reply with, all due respect, everyone does. And I'm just gonna leave that untouched. You guys can decide for yourselves what you think about that. I'm not a religious person, so I don't feel like I can comment. Anyway, Jesus reassures his parents that nobody could ever say anything to him to make him change how he feels about them, which gets them to agree to let him go to the camp. And that's when Mariana comes in, drunk as a skunk after Wyatt's party, and spills the secret about them sleeping together. After that, Jesus is honestly pretty sweet. He keeps going to Lexi's house, and because she's locked up in there, tries to talk to her dad, like at his office, to just try and tell him that they made a mistake. But it's all hopeless because her parents are super pissed and they're sending her to a boarding school. Lexi, when she finds this out, runs away, and with Mariana's help, she stays at Wyatt's trashed house. And then she comes back when she finds out that she's undocumented. After this fallout is when he takes Mariana to go tell Anna to leave her alone once and for all. And he immediately feels so sorry for Anna. And I've already talked about how I like the way they handle this. Having Jesus, the one who's been so adamant about not caring about Anna, be the one feeling bad for her and trying to help. He starts researching women's shelters that could take Anna in for free, and even though Mariana refuses to help, he goes to see Anna anyway to take her to one of these shelters. And it's so funny to me that when Mariana is refusing to help, she says that Anna will say that she needs money to live on for toothpaste or something, or food. And literally, when Jesus takes Anna to the shelter and he's about to leave, she says, I hate to ask, but I had to leave with nothing, not even a toothbrush. Like, Mariana called it. So Lexi's parents finally have enough of their fear that comes with being undocumented. And honestly, I think probably they also just got sick of Lexi's blackmail. And so they decide to go back to Honduras. When Jesus learns this, he insists that he's going to wait for Lexi to come back for college. Like, they're sophomores, people, which means it's at least 3 years he's going to have to wait. And she tries to tell him not to, but of course he doesn't listen. And the saddest thing is that he doesn't even last 3 months. I'm averaging 3 months. I'm sure it can't be more than 3 months because by the end of the season, Callie and Jude have only been with the Fosters for 6 months. And Lexi is there for Stef Lena's wedding, which I couldn't find the date of anywhere, which to me seems crazy, even on the wiki page. But Lexi leaves the literal day after the wedding. And the wedding has to take place at least a month and a half or 2 months after Stef was shot because she's been cleared to go back to work on her wedding day. Plus, I'd say the events before the shooting happened at least over the span of a month as well. So that's where I'm getting 3 months approximately from. And even if it's less than 3 months, say for example, Stef is cleared only 1 month after getting shot. Lexi comes back well before the end of the show. And Callie has been with the Fosters for 6 months by the time the show is ending. I mean, technically it's actually said that in season 2, and I'm not really sure how much time has passed between season 1 and season 2, so it's possible it could be even less than 6 months. And Lexi comes back before Mariana starts dating Zach, and they date for at least a month. All of this to say that he lasted a very short time for someone who thought he'd be waiting 3 years. After Lexi's gone, Jesus has a reaction to his ADHD medication, which just looks like he's having a heart attack or something. And it's honestly terrifying to think about. I myself do not have ADHD, so I can't say whether this show's depiction of it is accurate or not, but I do like that they treat it as more than just I can't pay attention kind of thing. Mike helps Jesus convince his mom to let him go off his medication, which means changing his diet, exercising more, and getting into a contact sport. So that's why he joins wrestling. On the wrestling team, he meets Emma, as I've mentioned, and they become friends, really good friends fast. Now they have chemistry, I just want to mention. Brandon and Callie do not. he even invites Emma to his grandfather's funeral, and it's pretty clear in that episode that she likes him. She answers a call from Lexi when Jesus says he'll call her back later, and what do we think about that? Like, I like Emma, and I like Emma and Jesus more than I like Lexi and Jesus, but this moment right here feels a little weird to me. Like, what is she trying to prove exactly? If it was someone else like Kelsey, I'd say she was trying to make Lexi jealous or something, but it's Emma, and Emma doesn't really do that kind of stupid stuff. A part of me knows that she's trying to make sure that Jesus isn't keeping her a secret or something. Like, she wants Lexi to know about her and to know that she's friends with Jesus. But it's also just so weird to answer someone else's call. I don't know. What do you guys think? Eventually, he and Emma do kiss, but Emma says that she doesn't do cheating. And I actually laughed out loud because telling someone that you don't do cheating is crazy after kissing them twice. Anyway, Jesus says he's going to break up with Lexi, and he does by sending her an email, but that's when Lexi comes back for a surprise visit. So he deletes the email from her inbox and tells Emma that though he really likes her, he loves Lexi, so he's not going to break up with her. But Lexi finds the email in her trash and reads it, then breaks up with Jesus by saying that she kissed some guy in Honduras. And man, like, her taking the burden off him like this, it's sweet and it's sad, but it pisses me off so much because she could have handled this in a number of ways. She could have confronted him about the email and asked him if it had anything to do with Emma, which she already suspects, but she loves him, you know, and she's been through this already when she tried to tell him not to wait for her the first time. She probably knows that he won't listen, and he might succeed in convincing her that staying together is the right thing. But she knows that it isn't, and she doesn't want to fight with him, like, especially because she's just sad that he just broke up with her, you know? So it's just... Anyway, that's basically it for Jesus. He's unlucky enough to catch the Timothy making his donation, which forces Stef Lena to tell the kids that they're planning to have a baby. And when Brandon moves in with his dad, Jesus decides he's going to move into Brandon's room. He argues with Stef and Mariana about it for a while, but eventually Brandon says that it's fine, so yay, he gets it. Unfortunately, due to Brandon's drama, he doesn't get to move in because Brandon moves back home. And that's it. As I said, not much. Another person who doesn't have much going on, Jude. First of all, Jude is so cute. Like, I forgot. I rewatched the later seasons more frequently, I guess, because I forgot how cute he is. His voice in the beginning is so high-pitched and he's so small. So cute. After Callie comes to get him from the abusive foster father's house and Stef and Mike save them, he's enrolled in the same school as everyone else, obviously. But the principal says that he has to pass the entrance exam first, which, as I've already said, is fair. But nobody is convinced that he will pass the exam because he's so behind, due to being in like 7 different schools in 4 years. He does, in fact, fail this exam, but Lena changes one of his answers so that he gets the exact grade he needs to stay in the school, which just, you know, go Lena. He gets a lot of nice bonding scenes with Lena and Mariana too, actually, especially after Callie leaves. But after the quinceañera, Mariana helps him put nail polish, which Callie tells him to take off before school, but he doesn't because Mariana tells him that he doesn't have to do everything that Callie says. He ends up getting bullied at school for it, and Callie is all like, I told you, go take it off right now. And Lena follows him into the bathroom and helps him take it off, and they have an interesting conversation. It's handled really well, I think, because we can see Callie's point where she just wants him to be safe. And you might even expect Lena to come in and say that she and Stef hold hands and they kiss when they're in safe places, but are conscious of what they do otherwise. And it might not be fair, but his safety is the most important thing. And if she told him that, I don't know if it would be right or wrong, but it would be understandable. However, this show said, nah, we're going full out Steph herself has internalized homophobia because she was taught to hide who she is, and it causes problems in their marriage down the line. So I think it's definitely better to embrace who Jude is, give him the facts that people are not going to accept him, and that being open about who he is will make his life harder, and then just let him decide for himself how he wants to act, knowing that he'll be supported by his parents and his family either way. It's also really funny the way Lena starts off her speech with,
"When Steph and I are at home, we hold hands and kiss."
And Jude just so innocently goes,
"Really?"
It just makes me laugh every time. And in the end, he stands up to Callie, saying that he won't take the nail polish off, and he's not going to have her detached, pessimistic attitude about the Fosters because he likes them and he wants a family. And when she tells him he's going to get hurt, he replies, "I already hurt." And it's a reminder that Jude is not as young as Callie treats him, and he's had similar horrible experiences as Callie. Not similar, that's a bit of a, Callie was raped, but still, like, Jude was in the same abusive home, beaten by the same abusive father. He's been in as many homes as Callie, terrible situations with other foster kids, so he's had a hard life too. I think this is also the same episode where Connor is first introduced, and he's Jude's first friend. And when all of this nail polish stuff is going on, he doesn't do anything when Jude is being bullied, but the next day he comes to school with nail polish on as well, just solidarity, Then Connor comes over one day so he and Jude can work on an assignment, and Jude gets embarrassed when he has to tell him that everything in his room is Jesus's. So he spins this whole tale about how his dad was arrested for some money-related things because he's so rich, and he's living on an island, and that's where all of Jude's stuff is. And that one day his dad is going to come back and get him, and him and Callie are going to go live there. But Connor, he's actually so good about it because it's so obvious that Jude is lying, but he's so sweet about it. And I just really like Connor and Jude's friendship. Connor just accepts Jude for who he is, Jude has two really sweet moments when Steph is shot. First, he walks back from Connor's house in the middle of the night because he wanted to be with everyone, but he didn't want to wake up Connor's parents. And then when everyone is in the waiting room at the hospital, he moves to sit next to Lena and just holds her hand silently. As I've already mentioned, he catches Callie and Brandon kissing at the wedding, freaks out, understandably, and tells Callie that she'll always find some way to ruin everything because she can never just let things be. Which is interesting because that's exactly what Rita tells her as well, that she ruins good things because she doesn't trust them. He's also the one that notices that Callie is missing, just from seeing her guitar, which again, Jude knows his sister well. And he has a breakdown later with Brandon, and it just always makes me want to wrap him up in a hug because this poor baby, he blames himself for Callie running away because he called her selfish, and while it's obviously not his fault, it's 1,000% Callie's, he's not really wrong that she decided to do this because of him. If he hadn't told her that she ruined everything for him, I don't think she would have tried removing herself from the equation like this. But again, it's not his fault. The poor boy spends weeks in a constant state of worry from the day Callie runs away to the day she returns. And I really like the way they depict his anxiety, with him hoarding food under his bed. It could have been easy to just have the scenes where he's talking about Callie and showing that he's worried about her or missing her, but it isn't just about Callie. He's worried about himself too. When he sees the casework at the house, he panics because, as he tells Mariana, that's how things go. Callie does something, social workers show up, and they're moved. It's not just that he misses her, or that he feels bad because he thinks he's the reason that she ran away. He is also having his own crisis. He's his own person with his own trust issues and unease. Like I said, he's had his own terrible experiences. And gosh, this show is good. Guys, this show is good. He does make the hard decision to get adopted without Callie, which I also really like because, again, Jude isn't as young as people often treat him. He is actually old enough to see and understand that Callie is making her own decisions and he shouldn't suffer for them, at least anymore, as much as he loves her. It's different from him refusing to get adopted at the end of the season when they realize that Callie can't be adopted because she has a different father. That was out of Callie's hands. She was there and ready, and it's being taken away from her. So he's doing what they've always done, sticking together and refusing to leave her behind. But at this point, when Callie's run away, she's the one leaving him. She's run away saying that she wants to be on her own, acting out or whatever is going on with her, and he's refusing to be pulled into it again. Good for him, honestly. And obviously, he's also just mad at her. He tells her that he's gonna get adopted with or without her, and Callie tries valiantly to act like this is great news, but you can see that she's hurt by this. But who is Jude? You know, he's not playing anymore. And I like the fact that he's both so happy to see her when he comes to visit at Girls United, and he hugs her as soon as he sees her, but then he acts distant immediately after. Because that's how life is, you know, you love someone and you're worried about them, but once you see for yourself that they're okay, you remember, actually, I'm pissed at you. I also like that the show takes this opportunity to grow Jude's character while Callie is away. Without her, he's on his own for the first time, having to confront the possibility that she's not coming back. And I think that's why it's while she's gone that he fights with Jesus and calls the room they share his room, and calls Lena mom for the first time. He's able to allow himself to become a part of this family since Callie isn't there. I also must say that Stef and Lena's reaction to his fight with Jesus is nothing short of adorable. Like, how can you not love this family? This show excels at these kind of small moments that make us care so deeply for these characters. So even though there is so much drama, like constant drama, you care every single time because they took the time to make you invested. They show you the characters' milestones and other characters reacting to those milestones. They're all invested in each other, you know? At Stef's dad's funeral, he, Mariana, and Connor are playing with a Ouija board, and Jude just breaks my heart into a million pieces when he asks the spirit of his dead mother if it's okay if Stef and Lena adopt him. Like, They joke around about who's pushing it when they ask other questions like whether Mariana will have a boyfriend, and it's not clear if anyone actually is, but I'm pretty sure that Connor pushes it when Jude asks his mom this question. Like, whether the spirits think it's okay or not, I think Connor wants Jude to think that his mom says it's okay. And then of course there's the plot with their dad when Stef and Lena tell them that they need him to sign away his rights. Jude learns that their dad isn't in prison anymore. He's mad at Callie at first, that she didn't tell him, but then later that night she comes to apologize and they both agree that they're better off without him. But then, Stef and Lena come in and ask if they want to see him. And Callie is immediately like, nope, we don't. But Jude is like, hold up, yes, I do. And again, I think the time away from Callie, where he got to grow into himself a little, coupled with the security he feels with the Fosters, is why he can even suggest that he wants to meet their dad, whether Callie wants to or not. I think earlier in the season, he would have just let Callie decide. I've already talked about this scene and how good Hayden's performance is, but I would like to say that I do like how slightly awkward it is, because Jude was basically the same age as Mariana and Jesus were the last time they both saw their birth parents. And for all three of them, it's this weird place of knowing that this person is related to you, but you don't remember them. So he's sad when he's saying goodbye to his dad, but it's not hard for him. It's harder for Callie because she actually remembers him. Leading up to the adoption day, a girl calls and basically asks Jude out, which is very interesting to me because while this show may not do a good job of showing the kids with more than one friend at a time, they have shown that Jude is bullied. I think it's kind of random to have a girl just call his house and ask him out, but she does. And Connor is there and he asks Jude if he likes her, to which Jude says no. Then Connor asks if he can ask her out then, and of course Jude doesn't want this, but he says yes anyway. However, the next day, when the girl asks Jude if he wants to go out, he says yes, which gets Connor mad, and mad enough to say that he's not going to come to the adoption. Jude and Lena have another really good talk about feelings and sexuality, because Jude thinks that he didn't want Connor to go out with this girl because he might be gay. But Lena tells him that everybody gets jealous when their friend gets into a relationship. I mean, Mariana is proof of that, and that it doesn't mean that he's gay. But she also adds for good measure that if he is or isn't gay, it doesn't matter to them because they love him unconditionally. So it's great to add that part. Connor, of course, still shows up to the adoption because they're besties and he's a great friend. And finally, he goes on to get adopted without Callie. Such a heartbreaking scene that I've already talked about. Again, props to Hayden. He's so young, but he does just a fantastic job. And again, look at Stef. Dude, I am Stef every time I watch it, just fighting tears. But they do the happy scene afterwards with him getting adopted and everybody being happy, and hooray! That's it for Jude. Alright, gosh, let's get into the heavy stuff. Brandon. Brandon is the one character who constantly tests my love for this show. I don't hate him, but he annoys me a lot. I think it's possible that he has more drama than Callie, which really says a lot. He skips his audition to take Callie to find Jude and just goes downhill from there. Stef and Lena decide not to punish him for skipping the audition, which I actually agree with, because while he should have told them what was going on with Callie, I don't think it's something that necessarily needs to be punished. It wasn't smart, but it wasn't like breaking any rules or like he'd done a bad thing, you know? But Mike doesn't see it that way and decides that Brandon should be grounded. Brandon doesn't really react well to this, which is something that becomes a theme moving forward. Like, he overreacts a lot. So he yells at his dad, asking him why he cares all of a sudden, basically calling him a deadbeat dad, and storms out. He then takes it all back later, saying how he's so sorry and he didn't mean it, which again is a common theme. But what he says to his dad really gets to Mike, so he starts trying to be more involved as a dad, which leads to him asking Brandon to move in with him. I honestly cannot believe that Stef doesn't completely go off on him about this. She kind of just like lets it go for some reason. I don't know, she's tired, I guess. When Brandon tells Stef that his dad asked him to move in, it devolves into another Brandon meltdown where he insults Stef, basically calls her a control freak tyrant, and suggests that her being a lesbian was an inconvenience for him. Then he storms out, as usual, comes back saying how he didn't mean it, he's sorry, blah blah blah. And the craziest thing is that somehow he gets what he wants. Stef says that he made his point and it's his choice if he wants to go live with his dad. I cannot understand this parenting decision whatsoever. It only encourages Brandon to act this way because it gets him what he wants and he doesn't face any punishment for it. Baffling. He flip-flops between wanting to stay and wanting to move in with his dad. Talia, of course, wants him to move in with his dad because then they'll get more time alone. And of course, Callie won't be around all the time. Callie knows that Brandon doesn't actually want to leave his family, so she's kind of convincing him to stay. But then he spends an evening with his dad and he really enjoys it. And then he comes home and finds everyone playing a board game and decides, you know what, they don't need me, and announces that he's moving. But Brandon still doesn't actually want to leave. And after a talk with Stef where she tells him that he should just do what's right for him and not try to take care of either her or Mike, Brandon tells his dad that he can't do it. And annoying as Brandon is, I actually really like this scene. He looks so vulnerable and sad, and I really like that. It's good acting. The feeling of hurting your parents is so bad. That's why the older we get, the more we just wish our parents would yell at us rather than just quietly tell us, like how disappointed they are. So this scene gets me. Now, through all this, Brandon hasn't been oblivious to Talia's feelings about Callie. He had a whole conversation with Jesus about how Talia is crazy, but he doesn't really know the extent of it until Mariana's party when Callie switches partners so she won't dance with him. Finally gets her to tell him that it's because Talia thinks she has a thing for Brandon. And remember when I told you that he overreacts a lot? This is one such example. Callie tells him,
I'm tell her that she has nothing to worry about? Please.
And from that, Brandon decides to cause a scene, forcing Callie to dance with him, then drags Talia off the dance floor to confront her. He says, "Callie told me what you did." And I'm not sure what he means by this, because Callie didn't say Talia did anything to her. But she then accidentally confesses to reading Callie's journal, which, finally having enough, Brandon breaks up with her. I am kind of curious what Callie wrote about Liam in that journal, because the way Talia tells Brandon, ask her about Liam, makes it seem as if it'll reveal something sinister about Callie. At most, it's just proof that Callie slept with or dated her foster brother. Unless she thinks that Brandon will find this disgusting, I have no idea what her thought process is here. Without Talia, Brandon just has free reign to express his feelings for Callie over and over, despite her repeatedly trying to tell him and show him that she doesn't want anything to happen between them. At the party, he tells her he already knows everything he needs to know about her, and Callie runs away from him. He gets all moody about Wyatt and then tells Callie that he doesn't want her dating Wyatt because he doesn't want her dating anyone, to which Callie explains about Liam and how her having any kind of relationship with Brandon could get her and Jude kicked out of the house. And what does she do? She runs away from him. Well, runs is an exaggeration, but I'm making a point. She walks away. We then find out that Brandon has an audition coming up to be accepted by this really amazing, super expensive piano teacher who has rejected Brandon twice before. But on the day of his audition, his dad is late picking him up, which throws Brandon off and makes him play badly and lose the scholarship. Mike, knowing this was entirely his fault, convinces the teacher to let Brandon play again and gets him accepted as a student, though without the scholarship, so he has to pay the full fees, which amounts to like $1,200 a month. Oh, I should mention that after Mariana's party, Brandon had to drive his dad home because he was too drunk. And now, after he fails his first try at the audition, he tells his dad that he can smell the alcohol on him, which is, because Mike is hungover, and that's why he was late picking him up. All of this is establishing Mike's alcoholism. Stef later on asks Brandon about Mike, trying to be subtle, as she always is, and Brandon cuts right to it, telling her that his dad is drinking again, revealing that he knew that his dad was drinking when he was younger, while Mike and Stef were getting a divorce. He tells Stef that once when he was little, Mike drove off the road with him in the car, and they have a nice scene where, again, Brandon gets really vulnerable. I think I just like vulnerable Brandon, where he's not being combative or argumentative or entitled, Yeah, as I said, these are the scenes that make it impossible for me to say that I hate Brandon. In other news, now that he's taking lessons from this renowned teacher, Brandon realizes that it's actually quite hard. The teacher wants him to feel and connect with the music, which he finds difficult because, as he says, he's never experienced that kind of pain. Talia gives him tickets to one of his favorite band's concerts, which at first he refuses, but in the end, after Talia gets humiliated by some classmates playing a video of her stripping at Wyatt's party, and some encouragement from Callie, he decides to take her to the concert. They go to get a coffee afterwards, and eventually they get back together. When Stef gets shot, he's understandably upset with Jesus and Mariana. He flips out on them, says some pretty awful things, and implies some pretty worse things, but Callie talks him out of being a jerk, so he apologizes and then flips out on his dad, who he catches with alcohol in his coffee. Truly alcoholic behavior. Shoves his dad and tells him he's done with him. I'm gonna skim over a lot of the next stuff because I spoke about it already with Callie. He's there for her during the Liam trial, which is what finally gets Callie to admit that she likes him. They kiss at the wedding. Then he's torturing himself the entire time she's away, trying to figure out if she ran away with Wyatt because she loves him, which is what everyone else thinks. Finally, he can't take it when he hears that his moms are not going to fight for Callie because they think she ran away for no reason, right after they told her that they want to adopt her. And he tells everyone that she ran away because he kissed her. Stef and Lena take him outside to get the proper story, and I love how Stef gets so upset she can't even speak. But what I love even more is that they ask him if Callie ran away because she felt unsafe, because that's a reasonable conclusion to come to. What is more interesting is that it's not an entirely wrong conclusion. It's like a kind of double meaning, They're asking if it's because Callie felt unsafe with Brandon, but Callie did technically run away because she felt unsafe. She was scared they'd kick her and Jude out of the house because of what she'd done. So really, the answer to that question is yes. Lena keeps trying to calm Stef down while they're talking to Brandon, and eventually just takes over the conversation. But honestly, I think this calm parenting style is not right for this situation. It's not right for many situations, but this one in particular. Callie is alone on the streets and in violation of probation. I think some yelling is in order. Mariana and Jesus corner Brandon in his room when his mom's telling him that he can leave, and Mariana is pissed, but she's also all of us with the way she reacts because, okay, first she compares him to Liam, which no, she's wrong for that to be fair. But when Brandon says "screw you," she says, "I'm surprised you haven't tried." Crazy comeback, honestly. Then Brandon tells Jesus that he told their moms what happened so that they can bring her back home, which backfires badly because Stef and Lena do go to Callie's hearing but say they aren't ready to bring her back home just yet. And this is what I dislike about Brandon. When everyone else is making stupid decisions, they do it knowing they're doing something wrong or without thinking it all the way through. But Brandon either acts like he's doing the right thing or like he's thought the whole thing through and nothing can go wrong, when really he's just stupid. It would be one thing if he just blurted out what happened in the heat of the moment, but the fact that he really believes that after confessing to kissing her and having feelings for her, he doesn't consider that his parents might be hesitant to let them live together. Stef even asks him what he thought would happen, like, did you think we were gonna adopt her and you two would date? Which obviously means if they knew how he felt about her, then adopting Callie becomes problematic. But he's so arrogant and annoying that he doesn't even catch that. Anyway, now that he's confessed his feelings to his parents, Brandon breaks up with Talia because now he can't even pretend to himself anymore. Then he finds out that Callie is going to be in a group home and argues that this kind of tough love to Callie feels like no love. Honestly, if he had just stopped there, I think I would have actually agreed with him. But of course, Brandon takes it too far, saying that he and Callie are in love and keeping them apart isn't going to change that. And I just have to stress, as if I haven't already, how annoying I find him. Because in one breath, he's arguing for them to bring Callie home and adopt her to be his sister. And then another breath, he's saying that they're in love and they'll be together no matter what. I don't know whether he lives with his dad or not, they will still be legally brother and sister. So I just wish at some point that we could get an explanation for him about how he thought this was going to work out. Every time someone asks him, he says he doesn't know, and yet he keeps pushing the issue. Then we get all the stuff with him and Callie secretly dating, which I've talked about, until they break up at the funeral. When it's decided that Callie is coming home, he moves in with his dad, which is where he meets Danny. And I really gotta tell you guys, I had forgotten how much drama was packed into season 1. Danny gets introduced in episode 16, only 6 episodes from the end, and yet she's the cause of so much drama. From the jump, she's so off with Brandon. Like, oh, your collar is up. Men just aren't good at dressing themselves. What? You're talking to a 16-year-old. I realized as I was watching this that she gives me Nanny Carrie vibes. My One Tree Hill people, you know what I'm talking about. It's why I find her so unsettling, because Nanny Carrie traumatized me, and Danny has the same creepy energy as her. Brandon's piano teacher calls him to tell him that Mike called asking whether or not to let Brandon quit piano lessons. Remember that Brandon hasn't been going for like 3 weeks. A teacher like this, I don't believe that he would call Brandon instead of just returning Mike's call and telling him that Brandon hasn't been coming to class. I'm not sure why he called Brandon, but thank goodness he did, because it gives Brandon the chance to try solve the problem himself by selling fake IDs. A great idea that he gets from Vico. So he steals Lena's office keys so they can use the school printer, but Vico, the genius that he is, steals the Kindles from the office, which I don't even really understand, because what is he going to do with them? Is there a black market for school Kindles? Even if it's just normal Kindles, is there like, where is he going to sell these? Anyway, unfortunately for everyone involved, it happens on the same night as Callie's photo shoot that she's holding for some foster kids. So when the Kindles go missing, the suspect becomes Daphne. who was the only person Callie gave Lena its keys to. Daphne tells Callie that Brandon was there. Brandon lies to Callie that he wasn't, but she sees his car in the background of one of her pictures, so she starts investigating him. That's how she finds out about his new career in ID making. She yells at him a bit and tells him, "I don't even know who you are anymore." Ugh. Frankly, this line is very rarely not an immediate eye roll for me in any movie or TV show. Unless the character has been shown over time to be changing, or there has been repeated and failed attempts at communication or connection between two characters, it's a massively overdramatic line in my opinion. But it cuts deep for Brandon, so he decides to set about making all his mistakes right. Anyway, this entire plan is so dumb to me either way, because what's done is done. I don't see how buying back the IDs makes anything right. He must just do it like to make himself feel better, or like to prove to Callie that he's a good guy. But practically, it would have been better for him to just swear off doing anything like this ever again and just be better moving forward. It also would have saved him and Callie a lot of trouble. Vico, in his fury, decides to hurt Callie in order to get to Brandon. Oh, I forgot, while Vico was trying to get close to Brandon so he could convince him to go into business together, they went out to a bar to test the IDs, and Brandon sees Danny drinking. She's supposedly sober and in the program like Mike, so this is bad. Did I explain who Danny is actually? Besides Nanny Carrie. In case I didn't, she's Mike's new girlfriend who basically lives with them because she's just around all the time. She later gives Brandon a great speech about how people make mistakes and it was a one-time thing for her, just like Brandon being out was a one-time thing for him too. Very manipulative, very, very sneaky and gross. But she's basically positioning herself as like a great stepmother or something, so that Mike thinks that she's good for Brandon. But at the same time, she's encouraging Brandon to be with Callie, so I honestly don't know what her angle is. Sometimes she's telling Mike to fight for Brandon to stay in his house. Sometimes she's suggesting that it's better for him to go live with his moms. Mike says that she can move in once Brandon is back to living with Stef and Lena, but she's also actively telling Brandon to pursue Callie, which would keep him at Mike's and therefore keep Mike from letting her move in. So, no idea. She's just like a devil on everyone's shoulder, whispering stupid ideas and manipulative words. So now that Brandon used his money to buy back the IDs, he doesn't have it to pay his dad back, and he decides to come clean about everything. But Danny is there while he's waiting for his dad, and she gives him the money, so he doesn't have to come clean about everything. Which really just leaves me wondering, like, how would the story have gone if she hadn't been there? Brandon would have had to say what he did with the money, right? Or more likely he just lied about spending it on something, some other way. But still, there is the possibility that he could have come clean about Anna. Though again, what good would it have done? I don't know. Having saved him from having to tell the truth, Danny tells Brandon to pay her back by playing piano, which Mike has been worried about. And she tells Mike that she's just a good influence on Brandon, which is just absolutely diabolical to say. Danny, the devil, convinces Brandon that he needs to make a move on Callie ASAP, because now that Wyatt's back, she'll start dating him again, and then he'll really have no chance. So he decides to invite her over to profess his love through song. And seriously, Brandon and Callie are so awkward around each other. All I want is some chemistry, something to tell me that they enjoy each other's company. Or is it just me? Like, do other people see something in these two that I don't? How can you tell me these people love each other when Callie's reaction to Brandon asking her to come over is like, why? And not a like, I'm suspicious of your intentions, is it okay for us to be alone together kind of why. Just a genuinely confused, what could you possibly want me to come to your house for? Anyway, Callie cancels on him so she can help Wyatt, who's living in his car, and Brandon, say it with me now, overreacts. He melts down at prom, which leads to them arguing. Callie tries to remind him for the upteenth time that she is going to be his sister, and he says they're not related. And Callie gets this amazing look of betrayal on her face that I genuinely think was done so well by the actress, because Brandon hasn't said anything hurtful or mean really, but to Callie it is. he's saying they're not family, which she correctly interprets to mean that if he's not her family, then neither are Jesus and Mariana, and most importantly, Stef and Lena. Brandon again fails to answer how a relationship between them would work, and then begs Callie to tell him something that would help him get over her, which, as I've said, she tells him she slept with Wyatt. Then he storms off, but not really, because he has to be around to see all the drama go down when Callie is accused of bribing the students with alcohol to vote for her. After his false confession, Stef and Mike take him to the car to get the real story out of him, and Stef's absolute disbelief through all of this is always so amusing to me. Even as an African, I have no idea how a parent should react in this situation with Brandon. Every single word he says makes the story worse and worse. The scene ending with Stef just closing her eyes in defeat is so real. Have you ever seen Stef in more disbelief? For once, Brandon is appropriately scared of the trouble that he's in, rather than being combative. Even he knows, he's really deep in it now. Mike, rightfully furious, kicks Danny out of the house and breaks up with her. And when Danny comes back to get her stuff the next day, Brandon is home alone and drunk, moping about Callie being over him. Danny helps him get to bed so he'll be well rested for his audition the next day, and then they sleep together. Yeah, I have no idea at all how this happened. I have no idea what Danny could have possibly been thinking, why she would do this, even with Mike having broken up with her, because both Brandon's parents are cops, and one is Stephanie Marie Adams Foster, and Danny is sober. So I don't know, man, just insanity. The next day, Brandon wakes up to a drunk voicemail from his dad, so he calls Danny to try find him, and I think that's honestly such a bold move. I understand that there's not really anyone else that he can call, but my goodness, he just slept with this woman, and his dad just broke up with her and kicked her out of the house, pretty harshly. Anyway, Danny does find Mike, drunk with bloody knuckles. Brandon goes to his audition and kills it. Then he has to go to school where he's pretty sure he's going to be expelled, but Vico reassures him that his parents would never let that happen. He tries to give some sob story about how he was going to get out from underneath his dad's thumb by getting a scholarship to university, but now his dad is forcing him to quit wrestling, so that's that. We find out later that night that Brandon got into the junior symphony, which he mentions so casually, it's not even a big deal. You may wonder how Vico knew where Brandon would be. If he'd been parked outside Brandon's house in case Brandon came out and then followed him to his dad's house, it would make sense. But that makes me wonder, how long has he just been sitting out there waiting? Or how long was he planning to wait? This beating is so tragic. Every single time I watch it. Every time Brandon puts his hand on the car and there's that slam, my whole body cringes. There's no need for a scream or a yell or the sound of crunching bones. We get it. It's so tragic. Hallelujah! That's it for Brandon. Okay, we're almost done, guys. I promise. We're getting to my favorite character, Stef. I'm gonna do both her and Lena because Lord knows this video doesn't need to be any longer, but I really want you to know how much I love Stef. So I have kept a record of every time I said I love Stef so much, and I'm gonna play the clips for you at the end of this video to thank you for sticking through this long breakdown. Alright? I'll stick to the stuff that's just about Stef and Lena as much as possible to avoid repetition. So rather than starting at the beginning, we'll start with Mike being assigned Stef's partner. It's kind of crazy if you think about it. This show is all about different families, and divorced parents trying to co-parent is one of the main plots of this season. Plus, Lena as a technical stepmom. But having Mike insist on being Stef's partner at work really goes that extra mile to show just how healthy they are as a family. Mike's not jealous or harboring any hurt feelings about Stef leaving him or being a lesbian. And Lena doesn't love the idea, but when he explains to her why he did it, she actually thanks him. After Brandon skips his audition, Stef and Lena decide not to punish him. As I've said, Mike isn't okay with that. He calls Lena Hippy Dippy Lena and says he's sure she has some idea about how punishing him will injure his blossoming sense of self. And it's really funny to me that he says this, considering his only idea of punishment is grounding. Where I come from, that's the hippy-dippy parenting approach. Not really having any option but to accommodate Mike's request, Stef brings Mike over to talk it over with Lena, and it doesn't go well. Mike says, with all due respect, of course, that Lena's opinion doesn't actually matter here, considering she's not Brandon's parent. Rude. Then Lena asks Stef what she thinks, and poor Stef, she's been trying so hard to keep the peace and to keep Mike in check throughout this conversation. She's put on the spot, and she admits that she thinks Mike has a point, which leads to a fight between her and Lena later that night, where Lena says she was humiliated. And this scene is so funny. Just thinking about it makes me want to laugh. Despite the serious issue that they're debating, Lena says that she's just going to be good times fun mom from now on if this is the way things are going to be. I can watch this scene 100 times, honestly. She says, want some candy, Brandon? Sure, help yourself. Want some cigarettes? Smoke it up. Lung cancer be damned. Want some booze? No? How about some heroin? The whole time she's waving around a knife, and Stef cannot focus on anything but the knife. I don't know. I'm so sure that this scene is what hooked me on the show. It goes from silliness to serious very quickly, and I love it. We find out that Mike called and apologized to Lena, and I would have liked to hear what he said. We know he respects her, but I would have just liked to hear him tell her, you know? I want to get this out of the way now so that I don't have to bring it up every time that it's relevant. I am so sorry, but I cannot get on board with their parenting style. Much as I love Stef and Lena, it's just insane that your kid throws a tantrum, and not a child, like your teenager throws a tantrum like this, curses at you, tells you you're disrespectful and controlling, and basically says you being a lesbian was an inconvenience for him, and then storms out. And when he comes back, you are the one saying you're sorry for raising your voice and admitting to him that he made his point. I'm sorry, but no. It's part of the reason these kids go off the rails for 5 seasons. Every time one of these kids does something wrong, they get mad, sure, but Lena is always telling Stef to calm down, which annoys me a lot because she does it while Stef is talking to whichever kid has messed up, which just encourages them to think that Stef is being irrational or overreacting. And it often leads to simple things like go to your room, we'll talk about this later, and the punishment is always grounding. The grounding isn't working, guys, like clearly. Stef is obviously upset about Brandon deciding to go live with his dad, and Terry Polo, seriously, she kills. Okay, I can't believe I haven't already said this. Terry Polo absolutely carries this show for me. She is the best actor in this show, followed very closely by Sierra Ramirez, who plays Mariana. One of the things I love the most about Terry Polo's portrayal is the subtlety that she puts into like Stef's mannerisms. The small things. She's like swallowing thickly and clenching her jaw, and her eyes. Man, her eyes. I'll talk about this a lot when it comes to the baby plotline, but here, the pain she feels when Brandon says he's leaving is so evident, but she's trying to act like she's okay, and it hurts me. Lena gives a pretty good speech one night telling Stef that she doesn't get to pout. She has to put away whatever feelings she's having about Brandon leaving and help him because he's in pain too, and that's what parents are supposed to do. I really like this moment because while Lena's parenting style might annoy me sometimes, it doesn't mean she's never right. They talk about balancing each other out at some point, but I don't feel like the show gives Stef the chance to balance Lena out. Most of the time, things just go the way Lena thinks they should, which is frustrating, but she does know what she's talking about sometimes. I'll give it to her. I'll never say that Stef is a better parent than Lena, or Lena is a better parent than Stef, because I simply don't believe it. I think as parents, they fill different needs in their kids' lives, and together they work pretty well. Though, as I've said, Stef bends to Lena's will a little too much sometimes for my liking because she's afraid of being too harsh. As an African, I think that's why their kids just go crazy. However, it can often feel like Stef loves the kids more than Lena. Feels like. Not that it's true. It is not true. Lena loves these kids a lot, but the show really goes out of its way to show us how Stef just adores these kids. She jokes around and has light moments with them where we get to see that she just likes being around them, you know? And then she also gets scenes where she connects with them emotionally. Like Lena gets scenes as well, like with the one with Jude and the nail polish. And that was a nice bonding scene. I've talked about it already. And it's not that I think Stef gets more of these scenes than Lena. I just think hers are often more emotional. Like either she or the kid she's talking to is crying or wants to cry or something like that. Where Lena gets scenes where she's giving really good advice that the kids need. I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say with all that. Maybe I'm just pointing out the difference between Stef's connection with the kids and Lena's connection with the kids. Mariana's party brings Lena's mom to town, and frankly, I love her a lot. Not as a person, but as a character. She's just like, wow. Lena's mom is very opinionated, some might say judgmental, and it stresses Lena out throughout the season. At Mariana's quinceañera, her and her mom get into an argument about race. Her mom says being Latina is more than just the color of her skin. Lena counters with, but being black is. And so the argument ensues about whether light-skinned, though I think in this case specifically biracial people, actually experience what it's like to be black in America. It doesn't get resolved, but it's an interesting point to bring up. Everyone has different experiences, obviously, but I think it's a similar struggle that bisexual people faced or face, I'm not sure if it's still a thing, where they didn't feel accepted by either the straight or gay/lesbian communities. I think I'm gonna leave this particular thread of discussion there. These are like, let's talk about it in real life type of topics, you know? When they find out their friends are getting divorced, Stef and Lena start to worry about they're not doing enough in their marriage to take care of each other. The small things, you know, that you do in the beginning. But when they try to be spontaneously romantic, that's of course the day that Stef catches Jesus buying the morning after pill. Sometimes the acting in this show is just so authentic, particularly with Stef and Lena. They have amazing chemistry together, so it feels real. Like they feel like a couple who have been together for 10 years. Example, when Jesus and Lexi need the morning after pill and Stef and Lena are discussing what to do, it's not that the dialogue is anything crazy or clever, it's the delivery, the body language, the facial expressions, that kind of stuff, you know? They agreed to take some time to think about what to do because Lena is in a tricky position, but Stef gives them the pill anyway, which of course Lena is super pissed about. But with the reminder of their friends getting divorced, they smooth things over pretty quickly because, you know, they've been reminded that they love each other at the end of the day. Next is one of my favorite storylines of the entire show. Stef goes to her dad's and ends up bringing up the church camp that Jesus wants to go to. And we find out that the reason Stef isn't religious, which it would have been a nicer reveal if we'd known that she had a specific break from Christianity at some point, but we didn't know why, is because her dad caught her cuddling with her best friend on the couch when she was a teenager. So he took her to a minister. During this whole interaction, all I'm gonna say is freaking Terry Pozo. I look at this transition that she makes from laughing in disbelief to hurt, so hurt that she can't even speak. Amazing. Now let me be clear. One of my favorite storylines of the entire show is Stef's internalized homophobia, which we'll talk about at the wedding. But it gets set up here where Stef's dad tells us how he feels about Stef's choice to leave Mike for Lena and basically says that she threw away the perfect life. I cannot express how much I love how speechless Stef gets. Later on, Stef's dad shows up to apologize and ends up staying for dinner where he debates with Lexi's parents about the Catholicism and their support of gay marriage, which I cannot even imagine how hard that is for Stef to hear. But afterwards, when he leaves, he apologizes for standing But afterwards, when he leaves, he apologizes for sending her to the youth minister and scaring her like that. Which, okay, in this situation, if you've just sat and listened to your dad express how much he disapproves of your family and try to convince other people that they shouldn't approve either, would hearing him apologize for traumatizing you as a kid, basically only because he realized it's what drove you away from his religion, make up for it? I'm not sure if it would for me, but Steph smiles, so I don't know. I guess she's just happy for whatever she can get. For some reason, Steph and Lena agreed to have dinner with Lena's ex, and this decision baffles me. What's the logic in having dinner with your ex and your wife? Not once, but twice in a row, especially when the relationship ended because she cheated on you, not just with anyone, but with your best friend. Like, why do this? Why would Steph agree to this? Why would the ex ask for this? I have no answers. The initial dinner goes well, basically. Lena doesn't love it, but she gets through it okay. Before Steph arrives, the ex asks her why Lena never got pregnant because she always wanted kids. And Lena replies, and I have them. Remember this for later. Once dinner's done, Steph invites the ex over for another dinner the next day at their house to meet the kids. And again, I ask, why? But anyway, despite Lena not wanting to do this, she goes along with it. So they have her over, and all is well until the ex mentions that Lena always wanted to get married and have a wedding, which Steph never knew. I actually kind of hate how we never see them resolve this conflict properly, because I would have liked to see it run its full course. The irony of the fact is that earlier in the season, Lena yelled at Steph with a knife, remember, that she should have lied to Mike to keep from embarrassing her, regardless of how Steph actually felt. And now, here Lena is doing the exact same thing. She's agreeing with an ex and embarrassing Steph. And let's look at the differences in how it's handled. Steph was very sorry when she did it. She apologized several times and told her that it wasn't her intention to embarrass her. Lena, on the other hand, she doesn't even apologize once. And her only response is, I assumed you knew. Not, I'm sorry, I thought you knew, just, I assumed you knew. Lena doesn't apologize to Steph enough, in my opinion. That's what I'm realizing this watch around. She says, me too. Like, Steph will say, I'm sorry, and Lena will say, me too. But she doesn't say it enough. Imbalance of power, in my humble opinion. But like I said, we don't get to see the full fight because Steph has to go get Jesus. She gets shot, and when she wakes up, proposes to Lena. We do get some nice flashbacks to how Steph and Lena met, and Steph telling Mike she's a lesbian, and then telling Lena that she's come out to everyone because she wants to be with her. Plus a scene of Steph meeting Jesus and Mariana for the first time. Really quickly, I want to say that Lena's inability to even look at Jesus and Mariana after Steph is shot is so real. She even admits that she's not doing a good job, but we're human, and she's pissed as hell at them. And not just pissed, betrayed. Remember that as well. At last, the wedding. So Steph's internalized homophobia as a result of her dad will forever be one of my favorite storylines in any TV show ever. It's a perspective that I haven't seen in many TV shows or movies that tackle like LGBTQ plus experiences. The show starts with them already having been together for 10 years. So there really wasn't a reason to include a storyline like this. Or they could have done it with Jude, because it's usually reserved for characters who are still in the closet or have just recently come out. Yet, it's so powerful precisely because of how long it's been for Steph. She came out 10 years ago, which feels like a long time, but she only came out because she met Lena. She had been actively suppressing this part of herself for much longer than she's been out, and that's bound to have consequences. Consequences that she's not even aware of, like her aversion to getting married. I love it. And they explore this more later on, which I love even more. It's not like she feels weird about the wedding, confronts her dad, and then has the wedding, and she's good. She spends the whole episode making fun of or being irritated by everything that has to do with this wedding, until Lena finally snaps at her that if she doesn't want to get married, then they just shouldn't. I love how shocked Steph is by Lena's outburst, because it shows she genuinely never even realized that she was doing this. Once she does, she goes to talk to her dad about it. And I think the hardest part about this for Stef is how much like her father she is. Like, she really loves him, and if it weren't for this one admittedly huge thing separating them, they would be very close. So I believe that for 10 years, Stef's been putting up with this, like trying to keep things the same between her and her dad, trying to maintain the relationship. And that means that she probably doesn't talk about Lena much. In a previous episode, we learned that he hadn't been around their house for dinner in a long time. I think that means that in order for Stef to keep her dad in her life, she was still in some way keeping herself and her family and her love for Lena, most importantly, a secret. And not a secret like from the world, obviously, but specifically from her dad. The kind of thing that you just don't talk about. Think about how he immediately says he doesn't want to get into it when Stef starts talking about how she adores Lena. He doesn't want to hear it, and she knows that. So for the past 10 years, they just don't talk about it like a secret. So it makes sense to me that she would tell him not to come to the wedding. He makes her want to hide, and that's the opposite function of a wedding. Side note, I've actually never thought about this before, but Mike's last name is Foster. So why does Stef keep it after the divorce? Then the twins are called Foster as well, not Adams Foster or Adams or Stef's last name. And when Stef and Lena get married, Lena takes on Foster in her name as well. So she has Mike's last name. Anyway, after the wedding, when they realize that Callie's missing, I like that they show how Stef and Lena are affected by it. We know why Callie left, but as far as they know, it's because they said they want to adopt her. So it feels like she rejected them, which is heartbreaking for both of them, because obviously they love Callie, like she was already their daughter. So it's the same as if Mariana did this. I can just imagine how hard it was for both of them to stand in the courtroom and say that they couldn't take Callie back, knowing that she would think they were rejecting her and obviously wanting her back so badly. I've already mentioned that I think they did the right thing though. The funniest thing is that they give Brandon a restraining order to keep him away from Callie because he goes to visit her without permission, and then in the same episode, Stef goes to visit Callie when she's not supposed to. I guess we know where Brandon gets it, right? Lena's car breaks down. Actually, it broke down earlier in the season. Mike's been over for several episodes trying to fix it, but finally they decide to call it and try to get a new car. Stef's dad shows up with a new car as a peace offering, and Stef tells him to shove it, understandably. Lena actually tries to convince Stef to meet her dad halfway, which I think is a little bit strange, because knowing that Frank, Stef's dad, has likely had the same attitude for 10 years, I'm not sure what Lena thinks a conversation between him and Stef, especially after he didn't show up to their wedding because he didn't support it, would lead to, other than Stef getting hurt again. But she gets through to her because Stef listens to Lena and values her opinion, and so Stef goes to talk to her dad, only she finds him dead. This is also the period in which Lena gets baby fever, and on a whim, because that's seriously what this is, she decides she's gonna have a baby. Doesn't even talk to Stef about it. That continues for the rest of the storyline, by the way, but I'll talk about that later. During the funeral, Lena tells her mom that she's thinking about having a baby, and true to form, her mother expresses her opinion completely unfiltered. As if she can't see how excited Lena is. Like, my goodness. She says, "Stop torturing yourself. You don't want a baby. If you did, you'd have one by now." And she laughs. Like, it's funny. Oof. Lena's mom she's too much, seriously. Stef finds out that Lena wants a baby and is immediately against the idea, and understandably. They have a huge amount on their plate already with Callie and Brandon, not to mention the fact that they cannot afford a new car, and they were so worried about how they'd even manage with Jude and Callie. I want you guys to look at how many times Stef shakes her head here as she tells her mom that they cannot have a baby. and then realize that she agrees to go through with it at the end of this episode, off screen, no less. On this day, gosh, this funeral was actually so packed with plot. Perhaps that's why it's one of my favorite ones. Anyway, Stef finds out that Mike isn't being cleared to go back to work yet because now the story of him shooting on his boyfriend has been picked up by a journalist who is calling it police brutality, which has stirred up problems with the public. This whole police brutality storyline from the cop's perspective is interesting because at a glance you're like, of course this is not police brutality. You know Stef and Mike. We know Anna and her boyfriend, and we know that he shot Stef first. So what was Mike supposed to do, right? However, it's been brought up many times that it's kind of an abuse of power. They both went to this guy's house on personal business with their guns, not even knowing if he was armed or dangerous. Just that it was a sketchy neighborhood and he was kind of mean. So they went there to intimidate. That part cannot be argued. It's really the same thing they did in the first episode when they went to get Callie and Jude. Actually, come to think of it, why didn't they use the same Find My Phone tracker thing for Jesus that they did with Brandon? Anyway, my point is that if I were a member of the general public in this show, I'd have many questions about what happened that night too, especially since excessive force is something that happens often. But now we're seeing things from the cop's perspective, and it's interesting. You know how much Stef loved her dad? She invited the minister who traumatized her as a kid to her dad's wake at her house because he was her dad's minister. He tells her that Frank was constantly trying to reconcile his faith with Stef's sexuality. So Stef is like, am I supposed to be happy about that? And the minister is like, that your father was questioning his fundamental beliefs because of his love for you? Yes, I should think that will make you happy. Got punched to the stomach. Yet, I don't know, guys. I agree that people shouldn't hold on to grudges against the dead, but this really feels rushed to me. It's not the end of it. It's addressed more in later seasons, I believe. But right now, having the minister say this, and then he says, you have a beautiful family. It's like an apology for what he did to her when she was younger. It doesn't sit right with me. Justice for Stef. Like, she deserves a proper apology from this guy. I also don't really like that this conversation implies that she shouldn't have been so hard on her dad or something. I don't think that Stef doubted that he loved her. She was just tired of hearing about how wrong her choices were, or feeling like she has to be ashamed of her wife and her family. And that's shame that her dad, who loved her very much, gave her. They have her forgive him by the end of the episode, and I just wish that they'd taken a little bit more time with it. Stef then gets subpoenaed to testify in Mike's case, which is a problem because she lied in her original statement. Frankly, I don't see why this is such a big deal. Stef had just come out of surgery and she was heavily sedated. In her statement, she says that she doesn't remember anything after she was shot until waking up in the ambulance. That's fair enough. Maybe they could question why she didn't come forward when she remembered what happened, but that's not a big deal either. It wasn't really an investigation then. You can just say, you had a lot going on and you forgot. It would look suspicious, sure, that her returned memories happen to prove Mike did the right thing, but again, they can't actually prove she's lying because she's not. Her statement is the same as Anna's, just with the emphasis on the boyfriend didn't have his hands up. Stef acts as though she initially said something like, the guy still had the gun up, or Mike came in while she was being shot or something, and now she wants to change it. She's not even actually changing her statement, more like just filling in the gaps. Anyway, she's stressed about what to do because she could lose her job for lying if she comes clean. But in the end, she decides to do so. And she doesn't do herself any favors, by the way. She outright says that she lied the first time. She doesn't even try to attempt to say that she was drugged and woozy and just out of surgery. Luckily for her, the whole thing gets dropped because of Brandon's bribe. her boss actually just gives her an out where she's just like, so I have the deposition, but I couldn't open it. Since the case is closed, I don't see why I need to, right? Wink, wink. Love her, honestly. I think I'll talk about this because we're almost at the end. I really love how much time Stef and Lena spend together. There are countless scenes of them just doing ordinary things. A lot of time in TV shows, the parents just make breakfast, go to work, come home, make dinner, eat dinner, and then talk as they get ready for bed. But there's so much that happens in a day, and the Fosters does a really good job of showing Stef and Lena as actual people in a relationship, enjoying each other's company. Brandon and Callie, cough, cough. Like in episode 3, when Lena is helping Jude with her homework, and Stef is just there, like doing taxes or bills or something. Stef comes to school to have lunch with Lena several times, which is so cute, by the way. They do laundry together, they lounge on the couch together drinking wine, and then yes, they do also cook and eat and wash dishes together. It's not just that they're on screen together when they need to talk about plot related stuff. The scenes are set up and shot almost like the plot interrupted their lives, if that makes sense. On one of their lunch dates, Stef and Lena tried to choose a donor for the baby. Lena is very concerned with the baby looking like her, so she doesn't want to go with a white donor because she's already half white. And I think that should have been the first red flag for Lena, that she needs to slow down and think about why she's doing this. Stef doesn't put up much of a fight though, agreeing to choose a donor of whichever race Lena wants. Then Lena finds out that Timothy is actually a pretty gay guy, and she decides she wants to have his baby. It's absolutely beyond me why she would want to add another birth parent to the mix when she has to deal with Mike for the rest of her life, and Anna has already proven to be so much trouble. Stef raises the same concerns, but again doesn't put up much of a fight, and I'm not really sure why. The donor is one thing, Stef doesn't care what the baby looks like, but involving another person, again, I just wish they'd spent some more time on this conflict to show us how Stef went from I don't want it to be someone we know to accepting it because he's a good person. Alas, earwax. The dinner scene with Mike, Danny, Timothy, Brandon, Stef, and Lena is just hilarious. Lena is actually so cringy, good lord. The way she's hyping up Timothy, it's such a joke. Like, why does she think laughing at all of his jokes is gonna make Stef like him more? She's so weird. She honestly could have just talked to Stef about it. She's met Timothy before. She could have presented her argument rationally, but really, this is just more evidence that she's not really being rational right now. Timothy then tells Lena that if they want to use him as a donor, he's happy to do it. I'm assuming he must have heard their conversation. And so Lena is just like, great, full speed ahead. Stef finally speaks out about how all her opinions are being ignored. But again, this isn't addressed at all. Lena doesn't acknowledge this, and the next scene is Stef agreeing to go with Timothy. I've hinted at it, but seriously, Lena's storyline with this baby is kind of out of character, which is not inherently a bad thing. You could say her desperation for a baby is making her act out of character. And I even think you could argue her sudden desire to be pregnant is because her old dreams were brought back to the surface when her ex was in town. The same way that just bringing up the fact that Lena always wanted to get married led to them getting married, I think it's what has stirred this desire for a baby. Then Stef was shot and Lena felt betrayed by Jesus and Mariana. Remember, she couldn't even look at them. I think she was having thoughts similar to what Brandon says about how they took the twins in and loved them when Anna didn't, and they still went looking for Anna. She says it in season 2. I won't spoil too much about the circumstances in which she says this, but she says that she's afraid that the kids won't love her as much as she loves them because she's not their biological mother. I believe that was triggered this season when Stef was shot and she found out what the twins had been doing. Okay, all of that said, it's like she doesn't care that she and Stef are having this baby. She just cares that she is having a baby. So Stef's input really doesn't matter to her. She's mostly there to just hold her hand and smile and be excited with her. She doesn't even have to acknowledge that that's what she's doing. After Stef storms off when she finds out Lena already talked to Timothy about being a donor, Stef just comes around on Timothy with no explanation. Oh, somehow I've forgotten to talk about Stef's feelings about the baby. I think it was a really smart choice to have us know how she feels before talking to Lena, because then we have a unique perspective on everything that she does, and I love it. Knowing that she doesn't actually want this kid lets us see how hard she's trying and doing an honestly tremendous job of being supportive and reassuring and just mustering up excitement for this whole thing. As I've said, Terry Polo is an excellent actress because she plays it so perfectly. These small things like the way she smiles or the breath she takes before a smile, the way she'll quickly hang her head and lift it with a smile. There's a lot of smiling, if you can't tell. Her posture, her tone of voice. You can tell that she's putting everything she has into being supportive and happy about this. Enough that Lena won't notice, but we can, because we know how she really feels. Eventually though, Stef slips up. When they are telling the kids about planning to have a baby and Timothy being the donor, she says, "This is really important to Mama." The one and only slip up she makes, and it's such a small one because that's not her saying it's not important to her. She's basically just giving us the reason that she's going along with all this despite us knowing how she feels about it. It's really important to Lena, and she loves Lena more than anything, besides the kids obviously. So she's doing everything she can to give this to her. It's important to Stef because it's important to Lena. If it wasn't important to Stef, she wouldn't have been putting in as much effort. We know her, we know how she is. It wouldn't be hard for her to avoid talking about things like donors or for her to drag out this process saying she's too busy and so on. But she doesn't do any of that. She tries to make this as easy as possible for Lena because Lena having this experience is important to Stef. Lena catches it though, immediately. Like excited and carried away as she is, she catches it. She's been with Stef for 10 years after all, and she can't ignore the phrasing. Somewhere in the midst of all this, Anna tries to blackmail Stef, telling her she'll go to the DA to report that Brandon bribed her unless Stef gives her $10,000. An insane amount, honestly. But I can see why she'd think they have it, considering both Mariana and Brandon were able to give her so much money. She probably thinks it was their allowance or something. Angry Stef is scary, particularly scary to me. Her voice gets so quiet when she's pissed, and I think it feels so dangerous because my mom does the same thing. In case you forgot, let me remind you. This whole situation with Timothy is actually insane. When he comes over to make his donation, Stef gives him the cup and she tells him, "You don't need to fill the whole thing." Like, ay, as if he could, please. And then they tell him, "Take your time," and he says, "I always do." What? What is this conversation? Like, what is this scene? Why is this scene? After Brandon's confession, which again, Stef's utter and complete disbelief always gets me in this scene, Stef now has Mike asking her what they're gonna do, and she of course is freaking out. So she decides to go to Anna and set a trap where she'll pretend that she's gonna give Anna the money and record her trying to extort a police officer. Meanwhile, Lena is having a crisis of her own, though admittedly not as dire, because Timothy tells her he can't sign the contract. It feels like it should be illegal or something, right? Because holy hell, it's insane behavior. He volunteered himself for the donation. They didn't even ask him. He said all the stuff about how they're great people and they deserve it. And then he's just like, actually, I think I want to be a dad. Come to think of it. Hey, insanity. Exactly the kind of drama that they both do not need right now. Stef reacts badly because she's kind of dealing with a lot, in case you hadn't noticed. And so it leads to her finally telling Lena that she doesn't want her to have a baby. She still does it really gently. Like, she could have let it slip out as she complained about how she knew that they shouldn't have done the insemination before he signed the contract. Something like, I didn't even want to have this baby in the first place. But she doesn't. And props to her, because that's probably what she's thinking. But Lena tells her to say it. So Stef just quietly says,
I don't want you to have a baby, Lena.
Like, it hurts her to say, which I really think it does. But I'm curious how Stef would have reacted to this without all the Brandon drama, because that is what has her at the end of her rope. And why is she so expressive about her genuine feelings about this whole baby thing? But if she was still just being her supportive self, wanting to give Lena everything, how would she have handled the news about Timothy? I don't think she'd have said she doesn't want Lena to have a baby. Can you also imagine how hearing this must feel for Lena? Because she's been on cloud 9 for like about a month, just dreaming about having a baby and so excited about being pregnant, and now all that joy is just like sucked away. And mind you, she's also just been betrayed by her friend Timothy. Despite her crippling disappointment in Brandon and generally being overwhelmed by everything happening in her life at the moment, Stef still shows up for Brandon's audition. She's also the only one who shows up for his audition in the pilot episode, I'd like to point out, even though I'd say she has the arguably harder job to get away from between her and Lena. Lena is apparently just chilling at home and Mike is on a bender. Stef, meanwhile, she's here. She loves her kids so much. I'm not saying that Lena doesn't. Again, I'm not saying that. But Stef is so animated in the way that she shows it. Like, when she's pissed, she's visually pissed. When she's happy, she's visually happy. And I love that about her. She's so cute. I'm just saying. Plus, she's always calling them my babies. Like, she'll walk in and she'll say, hi, my babies. And when she gives them a hug, she'll squeeze them and she'll be like, oh, my babies. I don't know. I'm biased because I love Stef so much. But I really do promise that I love Lena. I'm just pointing out that the writers give Stef more physically affectionate scenes with the kids than Lena. Anna doesn't show up to Stef's sting operation, and Mike's been found drunk with blood all over his hands, so we're left wondering, did Mike do something to Anna? But no time to think about it because it's adoption time. Lena tells Stef she was right, their kids need them, and now is not the time for a baby, except it's basically a useless statement for her to say because what can you do? She's pregnant. The first time I watched this, I remember feeling so scared about how Stef was going to react. I thought she'd accidentally say something like, oh no, and I really didn't want her to because I knew that was going to be so bad for their relationship. But I should never have doubted my dear Stephanie, because of course she feels nothing but love when she hears that. Of course she would. I don't even think it's a rushed resolution like the other times she went along with what Lena wanted. Stef loves her babies. I've literally just said that. And she loves Lena to death. There's no way Stef wouldn't immediately fall in love with and feel very protective of Lena's baby. And that's it for Stef and Lena. Hooray! We made it. That's it. I'm just gonna end it. No outro. Go rewatch season 1 of The Fosters if you haven't in a while. If you recently watched it, nobody cares. Go watch it again. And look out for part 2 of this video where I go into the characters. I pray it's not as long as the video. I would like to express my deep and unending resentment towards my sister who asked me to make this video. I shall never be doing anything she asks again. To end on a light note, here are all the clips where I say to myself, I love Stef so much.
Who's this? You're not disposable, Callie. You're not worthless.
You are writing parking tickets and pulling cats out of trees.
And that's fireman.
You know what I'm
Don't
saying.
insult
You know
me.
what I mean.
By the way, Lena wants you to know that if you ever need any heroin, she's happy to help. Never mind, that was funny in my head. I'm sorry. This is her party, but you can cry if you want to. What you need. mama sandwich. You remember when you used to love me?
Don't do that. I feel terrible.
I guess just salsa will be fine.
You're gonna leave them there? We have to pay for those.
Yes, we're just gonna leave them there. You don't really expect me to work with that sexless dinosaur, do you?
Yes, I am.
That's what I thought. Okay. Thank you very much.
Out on the door so we can have Jesus time.
Wow. Is that true? He threw something at Jesus just like a real little brother. Get it? Shh, 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 shh. Okay, maybe you should ask me first. If you had talked to me first, then maybe I could have saved you the trip to awesometimothyfacts.com because that's great. I'll tell you what, why don't you give me a ring when the baby is born and I'll swing by the hospital and pick you up? Unless you already have a ride.
Honey.
This is a primal need for you to spread your seed?
Honey.
What? I don't need more game. I got plenty of game. My Brandon making kit was a bottle of whiskey and a backseat of Mike's car. I shouldn't have said that, should I? Please, little whippersnapper, get out of the way here. You just want to see the old lady sweat. Someday we'll be intimate again. It's fine.
Honey. Dyke bar.
It's not funny. It's not funny. It's mean. It's very mean.